I think my relationship with nature was the strongest when I was the youngest, actually. I think you start off in life as a really kind of curious kid and you go out into the world and there's these crazy different species like caterpillars turning into butterflies, and it's magical, it's transformational, and you're so caught up in it. And then you grow up and you lose that connection and you become much more human, and you relate to people and you go to university and you get a job, and all these other things become more important in life than nature. And I think reconnecting with nature and going back to nature was almost for me a move to get away from people, weirdly. And now I think I had a drive to get away from people and just be in total silence and in total back with nature. And now I think I've achieved a blend potentially with both, where I have a kind of more a happy balance, where I can, I can see the pleasure in humans, but also crave going back to the natural world.
Thank you. So in response to that, what's important to you in nature? What are the values for you?
The values that I see in nature, apart from the selfish value, which is just pure, utter enjoyment. I mean, there's nothing more amazing than taking inspiration from wild animals out there, and nature is raw in tooth and claw, and I think that's beguiling to us. It's very different to our own lives, and you kind of anthropomorphize and project yourself onto animals, and you think, God, how their penguin, it's just been like half attacked by a leopard seal, its guts are hanging out, and it just still keeps on going to feed its chick, and you take the kind of amazing values from that. But also, I guess, on a more selfish level, it's this disconnect that I see now that more than 50% of the human population live in cities. There's a huge disconnect going on, and I want to try and reconnect people with nature, because again, we rely on nature to fuel our cities, to fuel our civilization. And the more you forget about nature and the more you forget it's there, in a way, not only are you damaging humans, but you're also damaging the planet. You have to understand that nature is a balance. We're disrupting that balance. And I think we need to bring people back into balance. And I think I see that as my job and my driver is to try and make people understand it, value it, understand why we need to protect it, why every single one of us needs nature, and the planet needs it. I think the gender difference is something that I wish we didn't have to talk about. But there are gender differences as much as there are within genders differences. And I would love to get to the stage where it's totally personality driven and not gender driven, and that we all complement each other. We know who we work well with, we know who we don't work well with, and that is the ideal state. The fact is that the gender difference you become aware of in industry is that the upper, certainly from a very kind of Western perspective of wildlife filmmaking, is that the kind of high up jobs are all male dominated, massive skew. And that is difficult for women coming up in the industry because you don't have female role models, and females lead in a very different way. I just wish I had more females above me to look up to and to treat me in a more feminine leadership style way that I could aspire to being like, rather than aspiring to be like the men that tend to make it to the top and tend to be successful, tend to be a little bit more alpha, and have a kind of more domineering kind of right to make decisions, and it's all very officious. And I think if we could balance it out a bit more, it's not to say that you don't need that, and it's not to say it's not, there's not room for both, there is, but I just think having the option to have a bit more of the female leadership styles filtering down from the top would be a great thing. So the Frozen Worlds film that I made, it's my first film, and it's made in the format, I think when you're a producer, you still have to make a product. You have to make a product for the commissioner. So you're working within the parameters. You can't just totally go off the wall and produce a film that necessarily you want to produce. So what part of that film do you retain that is yours and your passion? And for me, the whole film, I think to me it's lots of things, but it's the structure of it, which was all about the sea ice. And what I really wanted to get, when you distill down the essence of a film and what's important, and what to me is important, is that people watch the film, that they understand the value of the frozen worlds. And to understand that, you have to understand that sea ice is really important. And so I worked out that these polar films, we see ice and we see land ice and glaciers and sea ice, and we don't realise the difference between sea ice and land ice. And I don't think people really understand, A, the difference, what they're seeing, and B, that sea ice actually creates life. It's a soil. It's an upside down world of soil, algae, and it feeds everything in the polar seas. And also it has great effect and impacts on the planet. So that to me was the number one. And how do you tell that? Well, you have to tell that in emotional, engaging stories so that people, otherwise you tell a sea ice narrative, it's really boring. And I guess that's when you bring your kind of emotional side of you into it. And I found this walrus story at the end that is a very tragic, heartbreaking, difficult to watch sequence. But it makes the film what it is. And I think it is the perfect end to the film. And people that have watched it are very emotionally affected by it. And then that sparks them to do something. And I think those are my two most important things as a filmmaker. One, make people understand something outside of just the little cute animal story. And two, make them want to do something about it. So that's what I tried to bring into my filmmaking. The things that I think need to change in the industry from a female perspective, I think it is the idea of a family, because the sorts of programmes we make involve us being in the fields for long periods of time. Now, it's fine if you work in other areas of television and it's 1 week, 2 weeks, 10 days, you can manage that. We're talking 6, 8 weeks, 4 weeks, 3 weeks, 6 months of the year. That's hard to manage with the family. But you have incredible talent in the females. So I would like to see the change being like people backing them, recognising the strengths and where the strengths lie in the individuals. Each individual is different. And thinking, okay, how can we make her life work and she can have a family, but she's really good at managing a team. Actually, she excels in pulling people together, getting the best out of them. Because, we can do the thinking, the creative, all of that part, the filmmaking. So we just need to help women. I think that's why there's a glass ceiling, and that's why you're not seeing the women at the top, is because this family issue. And if we can support women to solve this idea of having kids, being able to do both. And I don't mean being able to do both by working your ass off and trying to feel stretched. I mean comfortably do both. Then I think that is true equality. And we're not there. We're so far away from that at the moment.